but positive things they are in favor of. They like music, the word love. Their diversions might seem to be harmless enough. They praise the effect on the mind of hallucinatory drugs. LSD. The drug is extremely dangerous. It is the temptation and the danger that we propose to examine. CBS News, without any flowers in its hair, is in San Francisco because this city has gained the reputation of being the hippie capital of the world. Primary reason. We're asking whether any central idea unites the hippie colonies in this and other cities, whether they have anything to tell us, why there is so much emphasis on the use of the drug LSD. Those are our questions. Descent and change. When we are most in need of new energies and new solutions, more and more young people appear to be turning away from challenge into dreamy narcosis. The hippies present a strange our society. There they are. There seem to be very few definite ideas. They're in favor of taking things easy. That much you can see at first glance. They like to seek out simple and inexpensive pleasures. Their main colony has grown up in a low-rent district of San Francisco, which is called Haight-Ashbury. The place has become a mecca for young people from all over the nation who come in search of something new and significant for themselves. It is a mecca for tourists who come to look at the hippies. Many of them are seeking a new sensation. Lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD, or acid for short, possession of which has been declared illegal in California, but which is easily accessible here. The hippies have declared the use of this and similar hallucinatory drugs to be the source of new and valuable insight. The effect of LSD is to change the way the brain handles sensory input. The result is violent distortion of thought and feeling. The user may see a wild complexity of images, hear a multiplicity of sounds. This is called taking an acid trip. For every user, there is the danger of a bad trip. Sensory distortion becomes terrifying. The acid head may leap from a window or run wildly through traffic. There is a steady flow into San Francisco hospitals of young people who have freaked out. The bad trip is a frightening thing to witness. It must be far more terrifying to experience. Hospital people, whether they want to or not, are becoming expert in the handling of LSD users in trouble. At the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute, Dr. J. Thomas Ungerleider sums up the things being learned.
Well, we're learning that it's a very dangerous drug, and it's a very unpredictable drug. We're learning that people can have a bad experience, which they call a freak trip or freak out or bummer, the first time they use the drug, or they can have it after 150 previous good experiences. We're learning that there's no way to screen out the adverse reactors. There's not psychiatric interviews, not psychological testing. not a history of absence of symptoms or of job stability. Nothing guarantees immunity from the bad trip. People come in often with frightening auditory and visual hallucinations. They hear and see things that are frightening. They come in with anxiety to the point of panic. They come in with depression, with suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, some severe, and they come in with confusion. They wander about not knowing where they are. And the difficulty with it is we can't predict. Another thing that we're seeing are the flashback phenomena, the reoccurrences. Up to 18 months now, after you take the drug once, you can have the acute symptoms return in their original intensity, either in a situation of stress or in no stress situation. And originally we were seeing a lot of youngsters who took LSD as part of a chronic drug abuse problem. Now we're seeing youngsters who took it at a party or with a gang, got over the acute effects after the 12 to 16 hours, and then months, even years, a year, 18 months later, began to have the recurrent symptoms, the flashback phenomena. And this frightened them, and then they came for help because they couldn't control when they were having it.
The street, where hippies like to congregate, shows no hint of the horror behind the scenes in hospitals. But the street thrusts the hippies at the community. They can't be left to go their own way and forgotten because they make their presence felt. They take up a good deal of public space. They congregate, sit down, make music, make crowds. When the crowd gets big enough to block passage along the sidewalk or to draw complaints from merchants along the street, the police will move in and break it up. The hippies move off amiably with exaggerated politeness, and flow along the street is resumed for a while. In a sense, they have taken over the community by superimposing their own subculture and values upon it. They express contempt for money and pride themselves on being able to manage without it. But they are not above begging. Many of them earn bread by selling copies of various underground newspapers. This is the office of a San Francisco hippie newspaper called The Oracle. It's a busy place. Entering it, you can get a stronger impression of the hippies building a society of their own that can be had from the street scene outside. These people have a united purpose. They believe they have found a viable way of life which has its own values and vocabulary, which has its own psychedelic symbols. If young people are being induced to turn away from the straight world, they must have the feeling that there is something to turn to, something more than just idling about. There must be a destination, as well as motives for going. What might these be? We asked Gabe Katz, one of the editors of The Oracle.
Look around you, nothing works. The only thing the kid is presented with is when you grow up, you can join the army, you can go to war, you can get a gig working as an engineer, become a vegetable, and drive to work in your own car, your own big metal box. And it looks absurd. People in their metal boxes like this, going all over from job to job, frustrated, uptight. What joy is there in life? Life is and should be ecstasy. Being alive should be a joy, and it's a drag. They never had a chance to figure it out for themselves what they wanted to do. You were a this, or you're going to be a this. I'm going to school to do this. You go to school for the right to earn, to learn to earn, to buy more pieces of metal junk. And, I think the kids that are here, that are getting into this whole thing now, this evolution now, is one that is a result of the alienation that a child, particularly middle-class American, of not really relating to his family. Father's somebody that goes to work, and he gets shoved into school, and constantly subject to one authority or another. When he turns on, he sees, wow, there's something else.
Another name the hippies have adopted for themselves is the love generation. They like to feel an expanded, communal sort of love. They enjoy a sense of being part of a group, united by general affection for each other, a group where people serve and support each other. Every afternoon at 4, hungry hippies begin to congregate in the Panhandle, an offshoot of Golden Gate Park. They are waiting for the arrival of the Diggers, a hippie subgroup who show up at this time with a station wagon full of food, which is given free to anyone who wants it. The Diggers get this food in handouts from stores or restaurants to the wholesale markets. This feeding typifies the hippie ideal of standing apart from society by means of mutual help and love. It contains its own ironies, for the daily feed-in is dependent for the food being offered on the very society that is being rejected. It's all done with a smile, but it grates against the straight world because it seems like saucy children playing. Isn't this a funny kind of love? We asked Dr. Neil Fisher of the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute.
That's a good question. I think that's a good question. Primarily, you hear so much talk about love, like love sessions, love ends, is because many of the acid users have most difficulty with love. And many of them think that they can solve a problem by using LSD. Most of the people who use LSD are the acid users. Talk about love and humanity in general, and all encompassing love. But they have a great deal of difficulty loving another person for one specific thing. That will in turn make certain demands. So the kind of love they have is a very narcissistic kind of love. It's a sort of love state. But there's very little in terms of interpersonal relationship, or anything like that. Many LSD users are people who have a great deal of trouble tolerating getting angry or being hostile. They don't like to experience this kind of feeling. They're concerned about their ability to handle it. So they use LSD, hopefully to suppress or deny angry feelings. And they sort of take this very peaceful approach. But unfortunately, it is a facade that can't last. And I think many times, if you'll notice, I saw one example was a young girl who kept offering a flower to a policeman. And he said he didn't want to take it, and he was becoming increasingly annoyed. And she persisted in offering the flower to him. Now, I'm sure we'd have to say that really wasn't out of love. There was a provocative insistence that she was using. But I'm sure she would disclaim any kind of feeling of aggression in terms of what she was doing with the flower. So I think if you actually take a look at what's happening, you'll see that in the name of love, there's a great deal of hostility being expressed, but unfortunately it's not being felt, because many of the users of LSD particularly need to use it to avoid letting themselves experience anger, hostility, which is very normal.
People who suppress or dilute normal feelings with drugs get a kind of euphoria which is easy to maintain for a while, since it entails making fewer demands on life. The hippies see mystical virtues in this blandness. It makes them extremely self-righteous. Here, in a hippie pad, one member recalls giving a flower to an old lady.
and I want to stay there, and I'm not going to turn on anymore.
Most LSD users say they will stop taking the drug if it is proved it does definite harm. Proof of this appears to be emerging. Researchers are studying what LSD does to the chromosomes, that part of the human cell which determines life balance and hereditary characteristics. Dr. Jose Egutwe, chairman of the Department of Genetics at the Oregon Regional Primate Research Center, has conducted experiments comparing blood samples taken from LSD users with samples taken from non-users. His tests have shown that there is a higher rate of chromosomal abnormality, up to 2.5 times more in LSD users.
Well, chromosomes are found in all cells, and any character that you will pass on to your children is born by these chromosomes. The genes in the chromosomes will determine if your eyes are going to be blue, if your hair is going to be brown. They will direct protein enzyme synthesis, and any function that takes place in your body is finally directed by the genes in the chromosomes.
Some of the abnormalities found in LSD users take the form of chromosomes being broken when they should be whole, or smaller than is normal, or the wrong shape entirely. The effect of this upon individuals who use LSD, or upon children born of them, remains to be determined. But Dr. Egutwe firmly underlines the danger.
But we could say that the chromosomes, or fundamentally genes, are in the very core of life. Playing with LSD is playing with the chromosomes. I think that this can have disastrous consequences at the end.
Hardcore doctors say these warnings should be heeded, that drug users should consider their descendants, if not themselves. This is an unusual hospital treatment center, the Macaulay Neuropsychiatric Institute in St. Mary's Hospital. In this ward, they're responsible for the care of children up to the age of 18 with emotional and neurological problems. Not all of the problems are drug problems, but because of the geography, just a few blocks from the center of Haight-Ashbury, this institution has learned more than most about what happens when you take LSD. The doctors and the nurses here wear ordinary clothing as part of the attempt to produce a non-hospital atmosphere. But it is a closed ward. You don't get out without a key. Reporter Warren Wallace talked with one patient.
You like LSD?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because for one, it teaches me a lot about myself that I didn't know, and it kind of informs me about my environment and what goes on.
What does it tell you about yourself?
It tells me what I like.
What do you like?
Well, I can't really explain what I like.
It's hard to explain. You see, you've had an experience that I haven't had, and I'm trying to find out what your experience is like, what it does for you, what it feels like.
Well, it makes everything a little unreal, you know, everything that is hallucinations project in my mind, and everything that I see is myself. I mean, it's all coming from my mind, and all the things that I see, everything that I see is all, I'm making it all.
You're controlling everything.
Yes, I'm controlling what the scenery looks like about me. I'm not controlling it necessarily, but when it's happening, that's what's me. That's me happening.
How about people? Do you think that before you used the drug, you were afraid of people?
Well, I didn't know it at the time, but I realized that I was when I took the drug. Because it brings out your inner feelings more intensely.
And why do you think you were afraid of them before?
Because I didn't know them.
Do you feel that you do know them through the drug?
No, I don't feel that I know them, but I'm not afraid of being rejected by them. Because I don't feel any rejection towards them. I used to be constantly thinking about being afraid of them. But now I don't have to be afraid anymore because they're all beautiful, and whether they reject me or not, they're still beautiful.
Does it ever seem to you that this may be a little unreal?
Oh yes, but I mean, after you learn this on an acid trip, you practice it when you're straight too.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't leave you.
If everybody is beautiful, then there's no one who's, say, dangerous to you.
Oh, but the dangerous people are beautiful too. They're dangerous, sure, but they're still beautiful.
Why are you here?
Well,
story, but I'll try to break it down in short. I found God. I made me feel quite good, you know, and my mother mistook this good feeling for taking drugs, and I was getting kind of wayward and everything. I wasn't coming home on time, so she phoned the police, and I was brought to YGC, and then I was brought here. Because of my talking about God and everything, they might have thought that I was a little crazy. But I understand how they felt because I wasn't making myself clear on it. It's very hard to... I was trying to express something that was hard to express, and I wasn't really capable of expressing it. I mean, I can have the relationship between myself and God, but it's a mistake to try to make other people feel the way I did, and that's what I was trying to do.
What's God like?
Well, first of all, God is everything, so He's like everything. He is everything. There's nothing that He isn't like.
Is He like a man?
I don't know. Everything, He lives in everything. Everything on this earth.
I can't describe to you the feeling that it gives you when your son says to you, can't you feel it? God is everywhere. I'm going with God. I'm waiting for God to come and get me. It isn't a happy thing at all, or an inside. It's a death wish. And I tried talking sense to him. I said, Jimmy, you don't see God till you die. But he couldn't see that at all. He believed that he was seeing it right now. Jim hasn't adjusted well to school. He's an extremely introverted boy, or has been up until lately. Shy. He wouldn't try. Yeah, the least sign of failure to him meant an automatic stop right now. And I think that the problems that he had were magnified and triggered by the release that he seemed to find in drugs. And I feel as though that many of the children today are doing this type of thing, and if it could be stressed that this is a medical problem and not a criminal problem, I believe that parents would be on the telephone calling somebody as soon as they found illegal material around the house, which they don't do now because they're afraid they're sending their sons and daughters to jail.
Another patient under lock and key.
What brought you to this place?
I tried to commit suicide.
Why did you do that?
Oh, because there was just a lot of things on my mind and I really couldn't clear them out.
Like what?
Well, it could be from my taking narcotics before. Well, LSD and crystal.
What's crystal?
Well, I really don't know what it really is, but I've taken it and it's like, it speeds you up, you know, and it just makes your mind run really fast. I've taken acid and crystal at the same time, which wasn't very good, and I kind of freaked out on my trip.
What happened when you freaked out?
Well, the people I was with, they made me freak out. I mean, you know, they were just trying to blow my mind to the point that I couldn't control. But I got away from it. You know, everything was okay afterwards, but I think it was the after effects that really kind of scared me, you know.
You say that the people you were with were trying to blow your mind. What were they doing?
Well, they were just saying things like, oh, you know, we're going to rape you. I mean, just these things that, and they just keep on saying it over and over in different kinds of talking. And these people are asking animals. I mean, particularly animals. They say, oh, and, you know, this is what you mean. They don't care what they did to you, you know, what happened. It's really scared me.
The girl's mother.
What has happened to your daughter?
She lost interest in herself. She was very lethargic. She didn't want to do anything. She didn't want to go to school. She didn't want to do anything at home. She didn't want to do the things that she used to do. I mean, she just wasn't why we were happy. People together. She withdrew. And she right now, I don't think she feels anything.
Why do these things happen? We asked the director of the Macaulay Neuropsychiatric Institute, Dr. Michael Klensos.
Because this is really a very serious malignant from a modern civilization, which means that we no longer have the stamina to really hassle with our youngsters in a purposeful way of learning, that we are too busy in our own way to develop our own self-centered worlds of achievement, the adult worlds, and the youngsters in their own way have to discover a shortcut to growing up. We have not experienced this profound change where you can forget about religion, home, everything else is meaningful except the fact that you've discovered something that is your own, and this is how you must discover life. You must find this out for yourself. Mom, you don't understand. Go out and do what I do, and you'll begin to see the difference.
For many, the price of taking the shortcut to discovery the hippies put forward turns out to be very high. With an electroencephalograph, doctors fasten tiny electrodes to the head of a patient, by means of which they are able to measure the cyclic rhythms of brain activity.
One of the two types of changes that we see in these individuals that take over 20 trips from this LSD.
With heavy LSD users, patterns of brain activity which should be slight are slow and where there should be variety, there are uniform paroxysmal bursts. These are the sort of patterns that certify victims of brain disorders like epilepsy. Another warning, another mark of the self-destructive quality of drug use. In spite of the risks, in spite of reported freakouts and other disasters happening to individual hippies, the package they offer continues to be extremely attractive to the young. Here, the diggers have rented a whole house and declared it open to all, with food available 24 hours a day. By the house rules, no one is supposed to bring in acid, but the drug is talked about and joked about as being on the scene. This underlines a problem which makes it hard to take a tolerant view of the hippies. The way they dress, the way they advocate love as opposed to hate, peace as opposed to war, self-expression as opposed to inhibition. All these things put them in the role of courageous and warm-hearted rebels against cold, stiff, square, old-fashioned authority. The trouble is that a group where anything goes does not seem to provide good company for the very young. Doctors see a universal danger in use of LSD. They feel that normally rebellious young people may be turned into emotional cripples at a time when they should be meeting and solving problems of sexuality and personal identity. They deaden their drives with a magic pill which solves nothing. They may never grow up. This pad has been closed since we filmed it. And the diggers complain that others are raided, and that they are harassed by the police and misjudged by their elders.
My mom thinks that where I'm living down here, the hippies are a bunch of filthy and infectious people. This is my bag, and I found my place here when I came to this house here and started cooking. I got my own room, and I do my cooking, and I scream and howl, and I'm happy.
We found a cattle come in like a hippie, and he's a cop, and I make a stash so that the other cops can come in and bust the pad.
Why would they want to do that?
They don't like
Because
it.
they don't like it.
Why don't they like it?
Because we are doing things.
They're trying to break up the people. See, they don't like these houses, and they're trying to bust it up.
You see, we're out to change laws to make new society.
The aggressive determination of hippies to start a new society has made its mark upon San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury. Part of the neighborhood is occupied by ordinary people, bewildered by what's going on. Part of it is occupied by a growing population of hippies. There are a lot of for sale signs in Haight-Ashbury. There are a lot more houses being occupied by hippies. The hippies are capable of extremely hard work, even though they tend to approach work as the rest of us do sport. Some of them are very successful. This is the house of a popular local band which plays hard rock music. They call themselves the Grateful Dead. They live together comfortably in what could be called affluence. There are many other similar houses or apartments in Haight-Ashbury, maintained by hippies who work in places where employers do not mind bizarre dress or long hair. Their concept of a new style of life unites them, and that concept is, in most cases, drawn from the drug experience. The Grateful Dead themselves acknowledge they have used LSD. Warren Wallace asked them what they thought the hippie movement was trying to accomplish.
What we're thinking about is a peaceful planet. We're not thinking about anything else. We're not thinking about any kind of power. We're not thinking about any of those kind of struggles. We're not thinking about revolution or war or any of that. That's not what we want. Nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to hurt anybody. We would all like to be able to live an uncluttered life, a simple life, a good life, you know, and like think about moving the whole human race ahead a step or a few steps. And,
or half a step.
Yeah, or half a step, or anything.
Or at least not going around in circles like it is now.
Do you think that your movement or your idea, the hip idea, is essentially connected up with drugs?
Yeah, I would say that's a large part of the framework.
I think that most of the people who are hippies now came to it through drugs.
Yeah, but it's not a dope move. We're not trying to spread dope.
I think, personally, that the more people turn on, the better world it's going to be.
We were talking before about a way of being, and one of the ways of achieving that being is through drugs.
Expanding your consciousness, changing yourself.
Well, like most of us have given up the psychedelic drugs anyway. Yeah, right. Well, we've learned something from them, and now we're kind of playing around with that knowledge. And
what have you learned?
It's you can point out the example that the people that live in the community and you know, play around with dope and stuff like that, they don't have wars, you know, and they don't have a lot of problems that the larger society has.
In essence, the scene has grown up with us. We have grown up with the scene. We've all grown up together.
Because we know what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow up.
The tragedy is that growing up is a process that medical opinion regards as being inhibited by LSD. The acid rock bands of San Francisco play in large halls like this. LSD. The music and the light show which accompanies it carry the same howling and glittering intensity ascribed to the hallucinatory experience. Most of the faces you see are young. No liquor is served. Drugs are, of course, officially banned. But how can you ban a pill? Flickering soul lights accentuate the sense of unreality in having moved your mind. It may seem all of us highly exciting, a pleasurable trip into Wonderland, until one begins to wonder about destinations. It is on the street outside that some of the worst destinations are discovered. Night is the time when the street does not seem so colorful nor hospitable. It seems a place of danger. Night is the worst time for freakouts, for the terror of a bad trip on drugs. Night is the time when the sickness that comes from not eating enough, sleeping in the park, closes in to bring fear with it. A number of doctors who are concerned over the health of the young people who are flocking to Haight-Ashbury have started a free clinic where anyone can come to get medical attention. The doctors, supported by a staff of hippies, work for nothing. They want to learn and they want to help. There are a lot of hippies who need help. the main drug used in the hippie world. But now other drugs are beginning to enter the scene, so that many times doctors or their helpers will not know what a patient has taken or how to begin treatment. There must be a special motive relating to a larger view of society to bring doctors already overworked to serve extra hours in this clinic. The clinic was created by the director of the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Screening Unit of San Francisco General Hospital, Dr. David Smith, and we asked him about this.
Most of the people that volunteer for our clinic are either young people like myself who have some special interest in the area, or are older people that have teenage kids of their own. And we find that an individual's attitude towards, well, let them die, that's their bag, changes dramatically when their own child goes to the Haight-Ashbury. And that many of our doctors, we've had a marvelous response from the medical community, and many of the doctors are older doctors that have teenage daughters, and they want to help, honestly want to help. But they also state that they want to learn more about what's making the young people in the Haight-Ashbury run away from middle-class homes. The kids in the Haight-Ashbury are not poverty-stricken. They don't have poverty-stricken backgrounds. Many of them have gone to school, come from good homes, and for some reason they run away from home and go to the Haight-Ashbury. I think one thing that people don't realize is that the Haight-Ashbury is a symptom, not a cause, and that the kids are attracted to the Haight-Ashbury because of some deprivation, primarily intellectual deprivation, in their former mode of life. And I think this is why the middle class is so intensely involved in the Haight-Ashbury, because it is a product of the middle class. It's not a peripheral movement. It is a direct reaction against the forces that control the United States. It's not an anarchist movement. The hippies aren't interested in any philosophy, including communism. They just want to live their own life. Many people say that this is a communist-inspired movement. They're reacting against any structured philosophy, whether it be a university or communism or whatever. They just want to live the way they want to live without structural bindings.
The way the hippies want to live seems in the end to consist of childish postures. They claim they want to be left alone, but they are masters at setting up public occasions which are bound to draw attention, if not interference. Just as an unruly child will act up in a way that attracts adult intervention and then complain about it. Nearly every Sunday there is some such event. Here, music is blaring forth from the open windows of an apartment on the corner of Haight and Ashbury, while in the street below a crowd of hippies celebrates the sunny day. Today, there is no violence, and there's a reason for this. The band called the Grateful Dead have announced they will make music in the park. The crowd moves along, provided with a place to go, something to do. The Grateful Dead are playing a tune called, appropriately enough, Dancing in the Street. Most of these people are young. Most of them come from middle-class homes. On the average, they are well-educated, or could be if they wanted to. But they do not want that, nor much else in our civilization, except on their own terms. In many ways, their terms have the glitter and the attraction of the bright and bold and noisy. But it appears to be style without content. They object to the ills which beset society, war, social hatreds, money-grubbing, spiritual waste. But their remedy is to withdraw into private satisfactions. When one thinks of the problems of our day, which cry for attack and imagination and youthful energy, this seems like the greatest waste of all. The movement appears to be growing. Use of drugs appears to be spreading. There is the real danger that more and more young people may follow the call to turn on, tune in, drop out. Well, there are the hippies. They make you uncomfortable because there is obviously something wrong with the world they never made if it leads them to these grotesqueries. But granting the faults of society, you can say three things about them. They, at their best, are trying for a kind of group sainthood, and saints running in groups are likely to be ludicrous. They depend on hallucination for their philosophy. This is not a new idea, and it has never worked. And finally, they offer a spurious attraction of the young, a corruption of the idea of innocence. Nothing in the world is as appealing as real innocence, but it is, by definition, a quality of childhood. People who can grow beards and make love are supposed to move from innocence to wisdom. This is Harry Reasoner.
The Hippie Temptation was produced under the supervision and control of CBS News.